Watching Avatar the Last Airbender at 4 different points in my Spanish learning journey taught me a lot about language learning and helped me stay motivated. I started learning Spanish in 2022, and for the first few hundred hours, basically all I did was watch streaming Spanish videos and go through the Refold Anki deck with the 1000 most frequently used Spanish words. I started getting a little antsy with content made for learners and was feeling ready to take off the training wheels. Avatar the Last Airbender was an easy first choice. Avatar is one of my favorite TV shows, and I've seen it all the way through numerous times in English. It's just shy over 23 hours in total, and I could probably recite entire episodes off the top of my head. I knew that even if I wasn't able to understand the actual words, that I would still be able to follow the story and could hopefully pick up some new vocab. I was really pleasantly surprised when I started watching it to find out that I could understand a decent amount of it. There were sentences here and there that would go right over my head, oftentimes without me even fully realizing it, but they didn't impact my ability to understand the story. Going by the Refold method's comprehension scale, I was probably sitting at a level 4 at this point. The beginner stage of learning Spanish using comprehensible input was difficult for me because I had tried to learn Spanish many times before, both in school and using a variety of different apps, and I hadn't made any progress. I was enjoying watching the comprehensible input videos, but there was still the question floating in my mind about whether comprehensible input actually worked. It felt really motivating to be watching something in Spanish made for Spanish speakers and be able to understand it, and that was exactly what I needed to quell any lingering doubts. After finishing Avatar the first time, I mostly went back to watching Dreaming Spanish videos, but started slowly incorporating other dubbed TV shows that I was familiar with, podcasts, and some easy graded readers. I wasn't outputting at all at this point, but started to do crosstalk with a person I met from Mexico who was learning English. After about 500 hours of doing that, when I had been learning Spanish for right around a year and had received 1,000 hours of input, I got the urge to watch Avatar again. On the second watch, I realized how much I had missed the first time. It was honestly shocking. It felt like the moment when I learned I needed glasses and put them on for the first time and looked at a tree. I still couldn't understand the show completely perfectly, but I was pretty close. I was able to watch it and understand it without trying and could just enjoy it more. This time I was probably at a 5 on the Refold comprehension scale. Between 1,000 and 1,500 hours, I was watching fewer Dreaming Spanish videos and more dubbed shows that I had already seen before, but was also starting to incorporate some native Mexican TV shows. I was switching from graded readers to kids' chapter books and graphic novels like the Magic Treehouse series and Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and also throwing in some easier nonfiction books like Atomic Habits. I still wasn't outputting at this point, but was continuing with crosstalk sessions most weeks. After doing that for another 6 months or so, I decided to watch Avatar another time. None of this was out of some grand language learning experiment plan, it's just a show that I enjoy watching every once in a while. I was sitting at around 1,500 hours of total input and could understand it essentially perfectly. It's funny because watching it at 1,500 hours, I realized how much I had been missing when I watched it at 1,000 hours. Even though I could understand it almost perfectly at 1,000 hours, it just felt better and easier at 1,500, like I could understand it at a deeper level. I don't know if I was quite at a 6 on the Refold scale at this point, but maybe it's just splitting hairs. I could watch it with 0 difficulty. Over the next 500 hours of input, I started to read a lot more and also to focus on pure listening. I worked my way through all of the Harry Potter audiobooks, and I started watching a lot more native Mexican TV shows. I wasn't watching any Dreaming Spanish at this point and had slowly weaned off of dubbed shows I'd seen before. I was also reading a lot of news articles and essays online and was listening to a bunch of different podcasts. This is when I switched from doing crosstalk with my friend to doing half crosstalk and half more traditional language exchange. I also was meeting more regularly with an elderly neighbor of mine who was trying to learn English. About 6 months later, my little sister convinced my dad to watch Avatar the first time, and talking with them about what part they were at and who was the best character in the show, Uncle Iroh by the way, I wanted to watch it again, so I did. It also felt like a nice mental break because I had been engaging with content that was pretty difficult at that point and was excited to watch something easy. I was at around 2,000 hours of input at this point, and watching it was shocking. I felt basically 0 difference between watching a show in English and the Avatar in Spanish. Even taking into account that I had many of the scenes completely memorized from prior watches, it just felt effortless. There wasn't a huge difference between watching it at 1500 hours and 2000 hours in terms of understanding, but there was a level of ease. I didn't need to think at all and could even zone out for a minute and still know exactly what was going on. Now look, I know it's not exactly breaking news to talk about how I improved in Spanish over the course of a couple years and 2000 hours of input. But the reason I bring it up is because throughout the process, I always subjectively felt like Spanish was just a little bit difficult. This is because I was almost entirely engaging with content that was overall comprehensible, but still had unknown words and grammar structures. I never really recognized that the content that was feeling just a little bit difficult was getting more and more complex over time, because to me, the difficulty level felt the same. And there were some points throughout this process where I felt my motivation to keep going slip. I felt basically the same watching Dreaming Spanish videos at 100 hours that I did watching dubbed TV shows at 1000 and Mexican TV shows at 1500. It felt like everything I was watching was always just a tiny bit out of my reach. And I think this is a really common challenge for people who are learning a language using comprehensible input. When I watched Avatar each time, it hit me how much I had improved, even though the subjective feelings throughout the process were the same. And this was really powerful for encouraging me to keep going. If you're at the start of your language learning journey, I'd recommend you try to do something similar. Pick a piece of content. It doesn't need to be an entire TV show, but it could be an episode of one or a movie or cartoon or podcast, and use it as a guidepost that you watch every once in a while to track where you're at. Watching Avatar the second and third and fourth time and realizing how much better I had gotten was easily one of the most satisfying moments in my language learning journey, and I felt a massive sense of accomplishment, remembering back to when I had to really pay attention to follow along with the story, or would simply miss quotes without even realizing it. You can't always feel progress you're making in a new language, and having that guidepost is a really good way to make your progress tangible when so much of the language learning journey isn't.